Hi everyone. In the history of the Orthodox Church, there are many great hierarchs, teachers, those who defended the faith and those who helped to define the faith amidst the onslaught of accusations by heretics, especially when the persecutions ended. And when we move into the 4th and 5th centuries, we know many of these names of the Holy Cappadocian Fathers and another host of people that appeared during the Holy Ecumenical Councils to help defend the Orthodox faith. But yet, not all of these fathers among the saints are as equally well known. One of them is the saint that we celebrate on April 20th. Now, his name is Saint Theotimos. Saint Theotimos hailed from the city of Tomis, now known as Constantia in Romania. Tomis was one of the oldest cities, certainly in Romania, probably being established around the year 600, many, many years ago, and is also the oldest continuously inhabited city up until today. St. Theotimos was also known as the Scythian. Now, the Scythians were a nomadic tribe that eventually settled into the area that we now know as the Crimea. St. Theotimos was someone who, as far as we can tell in history, was the spiritual father and mentor of two great saints, St. John Cassian and St. Germanus. He was someone who assumed around the year 385 the bishopric of the city of Tomis and ruled there for the next 25 years. He was an amazing scholar. St. Jerome, actually, in his book on illustrious men, actually mentions St. Theotimos as someone who was quite learned in rhetoric and in philosophy. And in some historical sources, he's known as a rhetorician and philosopher, and also as the Scythian. Now, St. Theotimos, being as brilliant as he was actually a wonderfully pastoral man as well. Even the historian Sozomen contends that he was known to him as someone who would work healings among his people. St. John of Damascus mentions St. Theotimos in his writings, and in fact he is known today as the founder of the Russian Philokalia, because during his bishopric he was able to establish many, many great churches with wonderful mosaics, some of which are still standing today, and more importantly, the idea of perpetuating the deep and very highly regarded spirituality of the apostles that has come down to us today and known as Hezekiah, or stillness, or quietness, which leads us on the road to theosis. St. Theotimos was someone who was able to gather many saints around him who ended up completely inundated with this sort of brilliant spirituality that was a reflection of the theology of the church. And he was also someone who was friends with many of the other great hierarchs of the time. We might especially mention St. John Chrysostom, who was so enamored of St. Theotimos that he sent some missionaries to him in order to combat the Huns that were in that region and trying to convert them. So he was very active in his life, doing many, many things. Much writing, much preaching, much traveling, very wonderful celebration of the holy mysteries for his people, healing people when he was able, when he came upon them, and someone whose light was extremely bright back then. In fact, he even came to a council that St. John Chrysostom had to defend himself against the accusations of St. Epiphanius of Cyprus. Yes, there are instances in the history of the church when one saint mistakenly accused another of something, and St. John Chrysostom, of course, in this case, was completely innocent. Both these men, St. John Chrysostom and St. Epiphanius, are regarded as great saints of the church. St. Theotimos was untiring in his pastoral efforts, and he's not a martyr, he's not a confessor, except perhaps in regards to the things that he did to propagate the Orthodox faith. but instead stands as a light that God has set on a hill for many people of that age that still resounds for us today. We see his brilliance every time we read any page of the Philokalia. We see his brilliance any time that we remain quiet during prayer, because his influence was great as a devoted conduit of the spirituality of the church, which had its beginnings from the time of the apostles. As such, we should remember him and give him due regard as someone who, while not perhaps as famous as some of the other great saints of the age, still had quite an impact as he linked himself to their teaching and thereby influences us even today. Bye-bye.